So good afternoon, everyone. It's hard to believe we're almost through the first month of the year already. It's like I blinked and it's over. But nonetheless, I would like to wish everyone a happy new year, and I hope everyone's new year is off to a really great start. My name is Janelle Washington. I'm Director for Career and Technical Education at the Illinois Community College Board. And I'm pleased to welcome everyone to today's Model Programs of Study webinar on agriculture, food, and natural resources. As always, I would like to extend ICCB's gratitude to EdSystems for their facilitation of the Model Programs of Study work in alignment with Perkins 5 and the Illinois State Plan for Perkins 5. I really hope that you all are finding this webinar series, the published guides, as well as the process that EdSystems use to develop the guides to be very useful in your own work with programs of study on the local level, in whatever capacity that you're working with programs of study. So the previous, I know EdSystems, they're gonna let you know, but the previous webinars and all the published guides can be found on EdSystems website, along with many other wonderful resources from all the great work that EdSystems does. So I encourage each of you to take advantage of the resources and the many ways that you can engage with EdSystems. So thanks again, EdSystems, for your continued partnership. And with that, I'll turn it over so we can get into today's webinar.
Thank you so much, Janelle. We really appreciate those kind words. And so I think it's time for us to introduce ourselves. My name is Megan Mitchell. I'm the Pathway Manager. Our executive, John Furr, is not here with us today, but he also sends his regards. So we have Emily and also Juan Jose on the line. If you all want to unmute yourself, introduce yourselves, that'd be great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Juan Jose Gonzalez. I'm the Pathways Director for Education Systems Center.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you on here. I'm Emily Ruska. I'm our Director of State Policy and Strategy, and I facilitated the AFNR Advisory Committee, which is why I'm here today.
So who are we? So the EdSystems Center mission is to shape and strengthen educational workforce systems to advance racial equality and prepare more young people for productive careers and lives in the global economy. That is our mission statement. And so we fulfill our mission through college and career pathways, bridges to post-secondary, and then also through our work in data impact and also leadership. And so one thing that is important to note about us is that we have a reach that is statewide and that we are an intricate part of many community networks, and we definitely support various strategic projects. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Juan Jose, to give a background on our model programs of study.
Great. Thank you, Megan. I appreciate it. For those of you kind of attendees and participants in our meeting, if you'd like to just put in the chat kind of your name and your organization and title, it gives us a sense of who's joining us here today and making sure that as we talk through the guide, we're kind of addressing concerns that might be unique to your audience and things of that nature. So with that is, why did we develop the statewide model programs of study? So the primary purposes of these guides was to really kind of create exemplars and examples or templates that local communities can do in collaboration with each other. So that's high school districts, community colleges, EFEs, in compliance and in kind of alignment with the state Perkins plan. As a part of these programs of study guide, we also wanted to kind of identify specifically a kind of unique secondary to post-secondary kind of program of study and pathway that identify priority dual credit courses along the way, and specifically trying to choose courses that are foundational to each industry sector. We really tried to define certain technical competencies that should be sequenced in the guide. And we really wanted to also kind of give an opportunity for employers to have a way to kind of contribute to the programs of study in select areas by kind of identifying work-based learning. Next slide. Our intended audiences, as I mentioned before, are obviously high school faculty and administrators or teachers working in pathways, but also community college faculty and staff, as well as kind of the academic deans and kind of early college liaisons. And obviously one of our big audiences, as well as education for employment directors that are regionally dispersed across the state. We're having our AFNR meeting today. We have an upcoming guide and presentation on February 8th on information technology. We have also a guide on February 22nd in architecture, construction, energy, and then in March and April as well. Side note, one quick highlight. We recently did an analysis on EdSystems webpage, and we found that the model program of study guide in agriculture, food, and natural resources, which you're attending today, is our most downloaded guide in the state. So you guys are part of a very keen interest of this webinar and in this guide in the state. What you're seeing here on your screen now is kind of what we at EdSystems have kind of started to say, that there's a state pathways model that is not official, but everyone seems to be coalescing around. And what's essentially important for that is that a good pathway has some key components that are always present in some way, shape, or form. If you're looking at the left of your screen, you'll see that every good pathway has some individualized student planning, some career focus or technical instruction, some unique opportunities for robust work-based learning, but also there's close attention paid to like core academic subject areas. Core academics can mean English and math, but also at times science and social science. And it's really important to think about how these core academic subject areas complement the career focus and technical instruction. And then as students progress in a pathway, there's not a secondary pathway uniquely distinct from a post-secondary pathway, right? If you're creating a pathway, they should be secondary to and through post-secondary, where young individuals are either earning technical skills, earning stackable credentials along the way, ultimately building towards low-skilled and semi-skilled jobs or early-skilled jobs, and eventually earning degrees so they can accomplish middle-skill occupation and advanced occupations, and even kind of produce high labor market outcomes. You see here on your screen that there's this reference to the College and Career Pathway Endorsement. That is a unique feature that is kind of passed as a result of the Post-Secondary Workforce and Readiness Act in 2016. The College and Career Pathway Endorsement is a distinction that a high school student can earn on their diploma that indicates some level of expertise in a certain pathway area and kind of a robust set of experiences completed in a pathway. I think of it similar to like in early, like a college minor or like a certificate kind of equivalent, right? And I'll get into some of the component parts next. What you're seeing here are the definitional or kind of the requirements for a young high school student to earn the College and Career Pathway Endorsement. I'm not going to go into all these sections, but I did want to highlight one important thing, which is the part of the slide in blue box, which is the career focused instructional sequence and the academic readiness. Essentially, for a high school student to be properly on a pathway and properly on a program of study, they are doing 2 or more years of academic coursework or career-focused coursework, with some of that kind of including early college credit, typically dual credit, dual enrollment, AP credit, or some combination thereof. And also, high school students are graduating high school, placing into college level English and college level math, meaning they're academically ready for non-remedial coursework. Those are kind of those benchmarks of the College Career Pathway Endorsement were really a North Star for our creation of the model program of study and the academic sequence and kind of courses that we selected as a part of this instructional sequence and process. But beyond the College and Career Pathway Endorsement, there's policy alignment across multiple levels and multiple aspects of our work or of the work of the state of Illinois and various agencies, right? So I mentioned already the Post-Secondary Workforce Readiness Act. Not only does that kind of law or legislation indicate the pathway endorsement, it also sets a statewide policy for transitional instruction, including transitional math, which is being scaled statewide. There's also kind of tie-ins with our work here in the model programs of study with kind of the Perkins authorization and career technical education, huge implications from the Dual Credit Quality Act and the model partnership agreement. There's also kind of tie-ins to the state's ESSA plan, which is kind of indicators for the College and Career Readiness Indicator for high school students. And we're always linking to the statewide goals around economic development, as seen here kind of with the plan to revitalize the Illinois economy under Governor Pritzker. When I really think about kind of what the model programs of study are doing, what we're trying to create is like a pyramid of a kind of quality student that is ready for graduating high school and ready for post-secondary success, and also in their first year of college, kind of building towards that success, right? So a student in your program of study or in your collaboration should be receiving foundational skills that are essential for all careers. So general workplace employability skills, essential skills, team capacity. But they're also going to be on the left-hand side accelerated towards a career area. That is because they've done multiple years of coursework in a certain pathway or career-focused area. Some of those courses are already for college credit, and they go beyond the traditional CT high school experience by the involvement of college faculty and college experiences. And by definition, a student on this program of study is going to be academically ready for college at the graduation of high school, right? They're going to have access to early college courses while in high school, and they're placing college ready in math and English when they enroll in your post-secondary institutions nearby. What you're seeing here on your screen is we at EdSystems have published 8 guides or 8 model programs of study. Each guide comes with a visual map and representation, but also a longer kind of 20-page guide and kind of explanation of our thought processes, the advisory committee members, and kind of key recommendations. The website here on the left-hand side of your screen is the link to all guides and all the things you might want to read. They're not really easy reading, or they're kind of a little technical, but there's something that you can definitely do when you're on a long road trip and someone else is driving. So I highly recommend kind of checking these out. But we wouldn't be able to create these guides or our policy recommendations or our course sequences without the help of a key advisory committee for each unique guide. So for each unique guide, we had an advisory committee comprised of college faculty, mostly from community colleges throughout the state, but sometimes universities. We also included high school administrators and teachers, and in some cases, key employer associations, such as the Illinois Manufacturing Association or the Restaurant Association, who can inform kind of the employer perspective on this guide, right? And essentially what they were doing is they were indicating to us what the desk research was not kind of properly showcasing and what we needed to alter in our creation of programs of study, right? Where were key labor market information we were missing, where credentials and degrees are kind of emerging or on the rise in a certain industry, and what are the future implications for career success and kind of for work. They really had really big say in key decision points in the creation of the guides, including a pathway map, selecting the key early college credit courses that we recommend in the guide, and even helping us create a working group to delineate key competencies in the guide as well. And with that, we'll kind of take a pause for kind of this general background. And I think we're going to deep dive about how we create the guide, each one, and kind of the unique process we engaged in with our advisory committee.
Thank you, Juan Jose. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our mapping process for our guides. So in this moment, we're going to talk about all of the components of how we created these wonderful guides that you are utilizing. And so just to let you know, it was a 6-month process where we took a deep dive into this particular sector area. So in this moment, I'm going to talk about how we identify high priority occupations and also how we determine promising credentials and map towards stackable degrees and certificates. So the U.S. Department of Labor. So we use this data to identify what we reference as a high priority occupation. So we researched occupations that provided a living wage, which included 1 adult and a child. And so in addition to that, we looked at occupations that also had some growth within the state of Illinois. And so we define a promising credential as a degree or a certification that immediately prepares an individual for entry into a high priority occupation. And so then these particular credentials typically are focused within community college. And so we want to be clear that these roles are were a precursor to like a stackable credential for a high priority occupation. And so what you see here is a deep dive into some of the research that we did. Again, this is simply an example. We'll dive a little bit deeper to this particular sector a little bit later. And so, for example, you see there's a list of various occupations here. You see there along the top, you'll see that there is a medium hourly wage. And then we have the question of, is this a living wage or not? And does this provide growth within our states? We also identify typical entry education for this particular career, and then the number of job openings, and then we identify the percentage growth. And so you'll see like different colored dots, like there you'll see green and then yellow on the page. And so green identifies like, yes, this is indeed a high priority occupation. It meets our threshold for a living wage and also growth. Yellow is like, we're questioning it. We got a little bit of questions about it, right? And so this is where we really relied on our advisory committee to give us more input about these particular careers here. And so when we talk about occupations, right? And so we kind of mapped out what particular degrees, equate to different types of occupations. So you'll see there are common CC programs, and then you'll see what careers these particular occupations lead to. So guided transfer moves into either a entry-level bachelor degree positions. And then you'll see there are some specialty certificates or business AAS degrees. And so then you'll see on the opposite side, small and local business, and also other occupations that equate to those particular roles and so forth. So next I'm going to talk about how we identify strategic community college courses. And so one thing that we did was we, again, researched many different institutions, community college institutions throughout the state of Illinois. And then we analyzed promised credential programs at these particular community colleges within this particular industry sector. And so within those programs, we looked at course requirements, right? Career focused and non-career focused, and also general education. And so we tallied up and labeled these particular courses to determine which programs were commonly targeted across various programs, which were more likely accessible for dual credit, and which particular courses had the potential for transferability, particularly with an Illinois Articulation Initiative or have an industry credential. And so now you're seeing like a snapshot of the work that we've done. And so this is literally a screenshot of a spreadsheet that we would work on to kind of showcase the work that we do in terms of our research. And so you'll see all the tallies, the different programs, you'll see the sum there that kind of adds up how often these particular courses show up and in what particular program. So yeah, so this is just a up close visual of what we just described so that you all can see it a little bit better. So now we're going to move forward and talk about how we map to the secondary and post-secondary sequence. So a couple of things that are definitely important to note is that we recommend early college courses to high school students. Our goal is that they graduate with at least 6 or more career-focused credit hours by high school graduation. We want to keep open the possibility for unique opportunities like work-based learning or a capstone course. One thing that is good about the use of technology during COVID is that there are different ways that our professors are able to deliver course content, whether that be online or in person. And so then that provides much flexibility and more access for students to take advantage of dual enrollment than in the past. And then we suggest that these particular post-secondary courses in sequence continue to accelerate the students. And then lastly, we want to make the recommendation that general education courses are supplemented with AP courses. So now I'm going to talk about how we define related technical competencies. So we selected foundational courses in each model program of study area. And so these courses map to multiple credentials within an industry area. They can be accessed for early college credit at the secondary level, and they're not currently recognized by the Illinois Articulation Agreements. And so we determine a set of competencies for each particular course, for example, learning objectives. So during this process, we looked at various syllabi for various courses. And then that's how we kind of selected the learning objectives and used that data to dive deeper into what key competencies were important for us. So now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Emily, to really talk about our agriculture, food, and natural resource guide. Thank you, Emily.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, everyone. Looking forward to talking you through this guide. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So this slide just provides you an overview of kind of the full visual of the guide, and we're going to go through each component part. First, we'll briefly touch on the occupations. We'll go through in the same order that Megan just walked you through in terms of the process. So we'll talk a little bit about what occupations emerged in our analysis in AFNR broadly, what post-secondary options were associated with that, and then what courses would fit into best preparing students for those for those pathways. So AFNR, for those of you who are on the line, my guess is that you have some expertise in ag, food, and natural resources. It is a very prevalent and growing field in our state, and it's highly regionalized. It is happening. Occupations and work in AFNR are happening in all sorts of settings, urban, suburban, rural. It's not just a rural set of occupations. It's really happening everywhere. And the way we ended up organizing the occupations, many of which are accessible with a high school diploma, but often to enter into higher levels of employment, an associate's degree is beneficial and strongly recommended. The way we ended up organizing it was kind of in two primary pathways, and these are not meant to supplant all of the broad range of AFNR occupations, but just recognizing what jobs sort of most fit into that sweet spot in terms of the education required and the amount of growth and the type of education needed. And that was kind of an agribusiness bucket, which you can see has kind of a broad range of occupations within that. And then a horticulture and plant science bucket that covers sort of preparing folks for a variety of occupations in plant and soil science, but as well as horticulture. And then in guided transfer, those we'll talk a little bit more about in a second, but that's those pathways that are kind of already set up to directly facilitate the transfer into bachelor's degrees that would be required for certain occupations, particularly in terms of higher level scientist roles or inspector roles, et cetera. So in terms of the pathways, again, this kind of mirrors what we saw down below. There are a range of agribusiness pathways that are almost a generalist set of pathways that you can kind of specialize within if you so desire. And then you've got the horticulture and plant science buckets. We also had a pathway in terms of animal science, but really what that best prepares you for is sort of getting into the vet tech roles or into roles like animal husbandry. And there wasn't a direct articulation from the animal science pathway necessarily into future bachelor programs. While there are guided transfer programs in ag and conservation, that you could also potentially stack some of these other applied associates degrees as kind of indicated by these dashed lines to a bachelor's program if someone were interested in that kind of a pathway, but that's not necessary in order to enter some of these strong jobs that were described in that previous table. So what best prepares students for entering those pathways at the post-secondary level while they're in secondary? So what we found in doing the course analysis at the post-secondary level across a real range of post-secondary syllabi is that there are a lot of common courses at the beginning stages of most agricultural pathways. And that includes the sort of, I think there are 7 pathways articulated in the ISB matrix, program matrix. And so we did our best to align our conversations around what's required under ISB CTE matrix, as well as what lines up with what's needed down the line in post-secondary. And so what we came to is discovering a lot of IAI courses in ag, food, and natural resources. And as you'll recall, the priority for this model program of study is not just identifying those Illinois Articulation Initiative courses, but also acknowledging that there may be some other courses that would be of value that you could implement in a dual credit sense that would not necessarily be IAI, but would be conferring the types of competencies that'll really prepare students well for post-secondary. And so what emerged from that was a course in agricultural business management, which emulates somewhat the introductory economics of food, fiber, and natural resources, which is almost universally required across ag pathways at the post-secondary level, but maybe easier to implement than an IAI level dual credit course at the high school level. But so again, you can kind of see this sort of two generalized pathways that allow for some specialization down the line, and recommendations around those first year courses in microcomputer skills or taking that sort of economics of food, fiber, and natural resources course. In the work-based learning level here, you will note that there are a lot of references to FFA, because in our state, there's a lot of FFA work that's happening to generate a lot of opportunities for young people in terms of career development and experiences. And so we tried to mark where there were sort of similar types of programming that align with the state level definitions of career exploration or team-based challenge, and apprenticeships, or not apprenticeships, sorry, career development experiences, which supervised agricultural experiences are specifically named in the state's definition for those types of opportunities. And then in terms of the sort of general ed courses, we've got a range here. And so you'll see that there's sort of just a relative general sequence of coursework in the English sequence, right? Just sort of getting you to those basic composition and communications level courses in that first year, and trying to push those down into high school where possible through dual credit or transitional English. And then in terms of math, what most came up was sort of the general quantitative statistics courses. So that was why we chose that pathway. There are some ag pathways that require different types of math, but the bulk of them primarily require statistics at the post-secondary level or gen ed math. And then in terms of economics comes up in a number of different ways in AFNR. And so that's why we emphasize that in the social science sequence. Again, that intro to food fiber, economics of food fiber and natural resources really came out strong. So getting a baseline of those kind of econ skills would be really valuable at the secondary level. And then, as you can imagine, biology kind of underpins a lot of the science conversation. So getting folks to those types of courses really made the most sense. So I know that there was a question in the chat about BS degrees. There were it wasn't as common across the post-secondary programs, when we were doing the analysis of the available programs in the state, and that's not something that emerged over the course of our discussions in the advisory committee. That's not to say that there aren't programs that do that, and certainly you're giving an example, Erin, of a specific one that exists, but it didn't emerge as a prominent pathway, as well as, remember, the primary focus of the model program of study was to kind of anchor in the occupations that kind of met all of our criteria, right? In terms of not only are they available and existing, but also are requiring of a certain level of education, as well as the wage threshold as well. And so we were trying to, while recognizing that there are a lot of specialized programs, a lot of 2+2 programs or specific relationships between certain community colleges and certain four-year institutions, recognizing that that's not necessarily a more universal thing that we can reflect in a statewide program of study, but that certainly if those exist, where those exist, they should be built upon in any implementation of the model program of study. So I think that was it for me. And I'm sure I went over time. Oh, no, I'm talking about competencies. I apologize. So the two, because of, as I described earlier, there being so many IAI dual credit courses, we really only ended up developing competencies for one course, and then the AFNR pathway endorsement area as a whole, because those had not yet been developed and we had the right people at the table, including the facilitating coordination of Ag Ed in Illinois, FK, we had the right people at the table for those conversations. But the Ag Business Management course you'll see here is kind of some business principles adapted to the AFNR context, as well as acknowledging sort of the importance of being able to comprehend and understand policy and regulations, as well as financial implications of businesses and marketing as well. And then for the overall endorsement area, we came to kind of 8 core, I think it's on the next guy. We came to 8 core competencies for ag, food, and natural resources that are in the updated technical and essential employability skills guide that was developed for PWR, but it's really about kind of acknowledging how integrated AF&R systems are in our world in various ways, that being able to adapt to new technology and learn about new technology, again, the policy and regulatory environment. There was also a real emphasis in terms of like how AF&R resources and practices impact culture, impact resource stewardship, and questions about ethical production and how we're rethinking like where AF&R is going from here. And then so to that end, you know, research and innovation being critical to that field, a strong emphasis from the advisory committee was that while our current programs and systems are being implemented, reflecting AF&R as it stands today, that the field is evolving constantly, and we don't really know what the occupations of the future will be. And so preparing folks in sort of a generalist way is part of what we think is going to help them be able to adapt. So that is it for me, but appreciate the time, and I'll take a look at some of the questions in the chat as well.
So now,
So I'll answer this question in the chat about the Ag Business Management course.
I'm sorry, Emily, did you say you're gonna answer it in the chat, or did you want to answer it?
I'll answer it in the chat.
Okay, perfect. So now moving forward, one thing that we are excited to do is welcome our colleague Jess Smithers from Richland Community College, who is going to showcase our motto, Programs of Study in Action. And so welcome, Jess, and we're so excited to have you and hear about all the great work that you all are doing.
All right, good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity, and was asked to do this, and appreciate that. And just to provide an overview of our program, just chose to share a mission and vision that we developed for our agriculture program here at Richland Community College, just as an overview of what we do. And I serve as the director of agriculture programs at Richland, work alongside Dave Shiley as outreach coordinator, Deanna Koenigs as greenhouse and small farm coordinator. So we the three of us work to achieve the mission of our agriculture program to deliver, facilitate high quality educational experiences inside and outside of the classroom to prepare and connect students to careers in ag. And our vision, we're not the only choice. We want to be the first choice for students within our district to pursue a post-secondary degree in agriculture and really serve the community that we live, which is obviously an agricultural community. So that's our mission and vision that we developed recently to guide us in our development of this program. So as far as the other overview, we do offer Associate of Arts, Associate of Science for those transfer for students, but also have an agribusiness AAS, crop science and horticulture. I think I might get into it a little bit later, but we do have some new certificates we're partnering with, for example, with our culinary department on campus to offer a farm to table certificate as well. So it's kind of an overview of the programs that we offer. For those that don't know, Richland is located in Central Illinois, the self-professed agribusiness capital of the world, Decatur. Obviously, we're blessed with some of the most productive soils in the world in this part of the state. Thus, our name is appropriate, Richland, and that's how we got our name. So we're very fortunate as well to have access to over 100 acres of land that we can utilize as part of our instruction. We do host the Farm Progress Show every other year, which provides some unique opportunities for us as a community college and our students. And you can see the schools that are included within our community college district there on the screen. And the only one listed, the only high school within our district that does not have an agriculture program is St. Teresa, a private school here in Decatur. So we're very fortunate now that all the schools within our district do have high school agriculture programs and FFA chapters, which has not always been the case. We added 3 in the past few years as well. So just asked to identify some of the challenges and I wouldn't say they're necessarily unique to us, but just as a relaunched or new agriculture program about 3 years ago, just like all of us, we want to do things extremely well. So finding sufficient time to and resources to do all things well. Maybe a bit of perfectionist myself, but so I tend to want to do all things well, like I said. And so as a new program, developing new courses, wanting to offer outstanding courses, outstanding degree programs, but also recruiting students to build that program. So to recruit students effectively, but then also obviously in the time in which we have lived over the past couple of years. So that revolved for me a lot of in-person student events or FFA events. And so without that possibility, that's been a challenge, of course, but also converting those courses to, developing high quality courses and then asked to convert those to an online format relatively quickly causes some challenges as well. So those are just some things that I, obviously thought of as a new program, but even well-established programs have certainly experienced some of those over the past couple of years. And we also want to further develop any dual credit and articulation agreements that we have, not only with, I guess when I wrote that, thinking about the high school programs that we work with, but also something that I've done in the past few years as a new program is developing those articulation agreements, those agreements with the universities within the state as well. So those are some of the challenges that come first to my mind, but we obviously have had some successes as well. And so as a new program, I feel very blessed with some of the support, with the support that I've received here from the community and Richland Community College. So, we've got, I guess, a ways to go in terms of program enrollment, but we have experienced consistent program growth since the relaunch in 2019. And this current year, we've been blessed with really quite a few scholarships were established prior to my arrival and prior to the relaunch in agriculture. So we have an outstanding foundation, but have also received some significant private donations, enough so that we have full tuition scholarships for the students within our agriculture program this year and anticipate that to be the case again in the next year as well for next fall. So certainly hope that spurs additional enrollment growth and hope to maintain those relations with our businesses and donors within our district to recruit students for our program and so that we can meet our mission of connecting them to the career opportunities within our district, which quite a few in agriculture. And as you can see in the picture there as well, a success that we're in the midst of accomplishing, a new $3.5 million agriculture building expected to be completed this year in the fall. And so look forward to that being done and having that new facility to help us achieve our mission, but also utilize for hosting and partnering with the high school agriculture programs and hosting FFA events there and other community events to provide that as a service, but also connect students to Richland. And as far as the last is, we promote with our transfer students and obviously with our 2-year degree students. It's a requirement certainly, but proud of the work that we've done to connect students with internships that have led to full-time positions after either the completion of their 2-year degree or their bachelor's degree.
So Jess, we have one raised hand here.
Okay.
And it was from, I think they put their hand down. Dean Demidar, did you still have a question? Okay, so it could have been a mistake. So what we'll do, if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand or drop your question in the chat. So we'll go ahead and move forward, okay?
Okay. Yeah, so and then if we go on to the next, as far as just outlining what dual credit, dual enrollment is an area that certainly we have a lot of opportunity for growth as a new and a relaunched program. So that's something that we have set as a goal to do and have interest among the high school districts to expand as well. We do have Heartland Technical Academy as a vocational academy that's here on the campus of Richland Community College. So it makes sense certainly for those courses to be offered as dual credit. So we do have a couple ag mechanics courses that are articulated, that are offered dual credit with our courses, as well as some ag business management courses and a pre-vet animal science course as well. So those courses are through the Tech Academy, offered here on campus as dual credit courses. And then
Can I ask you a question about
the
technical? Is that taught by a community college faculty kind of guest teaching those courses, or is it like a high school instructor being made an adjunct? Or
in this case, it is Tech Academy instructors, but if they're just in speaking about the Tech Academy as a whole, it's a combination. So in other programs, it is the community college instructors that are teaching those courses, and the students are taking courses alongside other non-Heartland Tech Academy students. So there's a mix within those classes. And in the agriculture classes, it's all high school students from area schools that are there, and it's taught by full-time staff hired by the Tech Academy.
Great. Megan, I wanted to highlight for folks, for those of you who have a link to the slide deck, on this slide in particular, I put a link to the Heartland Technical Academy homepage, and then with the ag mechanics and then the ag sciences and pre-vet, there's a link to kind of those sections of the Tech Academy, which has the dual credit course listings. And just, it seems like some of those kind of programs have like a 2-year sequence for kind of the agricultural classes and dual credit.
They do.
And
Yeah, so they have an opportunity to come to the Tech Academy as juniors and seniors. So they can get 2 different courses. So 6 hours, 3 hours as junior, 3 hours as a senior.
Great. And then is there a particular alignment with kind of, do you know if there's a particular alignment with some of the kind of high school secondary ISB programming or kind of the FK network or anything like that? Or is it just delivered as a dual credit options?
No, yeah, so they're definitely aligned to the high school coursework as well. Yep.
Great. I see we have a question here from Grant. Let's see if he can type it in. While he does, why don't you go on ahead and talk about Decatur MacArthur?
Yeah, so we do have a dual credit with Decatur MacArthur and Eisenhower as far as horticulture science, and articulated with agribusiness management as well as a 2-year degree AAS course. And so, yeah, looking to expand opportunities there. Certainly as our largest pool of high school students within those schools, with close to 500 students, I think, next year within those 2 schools. So looking to build that partnership through dual credit and otherwise, as well as with each of the districts within our community college. So that's just a quick overview. Yep.
There's a question about how do you align the labs required for some of the high school classes with your college classes, or how does some of that work done?
Yeah, so the horticulture, the Hort 100 is a lab science course, and so especially with that one, as IAI course. So quite a bit of communications and sharing of resources and ideas and syllabi and sharing of the labs that we do here on campus. There has been, we haven't done this as of yet, but just to address that aspect, but also just to build our partnership is having our horticulture instructor who teaches our Hort 100 class teach some of those lab at those high schools. Those are offered at the high schools, not on our campus. So that's one way. The other courses are not, I guess, obviously they're hands-on types courses. They're not the lab-based. So it's just a matter of being articulated with our syllabus.
So to clarify,
hopefully I've answered that, Grant.
Yeah, to clarify, for Hort 100, what you're saying is that class has an IAI and has a lab component. So you guys are not only in close collaboration with your high school partners, sharing syllabi, sharing kind of sample labs, you even have sometimes your college faculty kind of guest visiting or guest lecturing at that high school course. That's
the goal. We haven't implemented that as of yet, but that's certainly something we want to do, and we're kind of on pace to do until things got turned upside down couple years.
That's great to hear. That's actually the first time I've heard of that kind of arrangement. So that's a pretty innovative practice as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Yep. So I see a comment there by Bill Harmon, and that's something as well as the equipment loans and supplies. And so that's something that I've offered, and I think that's a great idea so that they can hopefully replicate as much as possible there at the high school level. And I thought of it more just as a way to, share resources. So I have some things here at the community college that the high school student that I'm, be glad to share. And so I think that's a great way that we can partner with and share with those high schools as well. So as far as what's next at Richland in terms of the agriculture program, I tried not to reinvent the wheel too much and just copy and pasted some of the priorities that we as a staff identified and for this year, and we have some subset goals below that. But certainly recruiting students is, we try to keep first and foremost in all that we do. And that's what I tell my staff is doing our very best each and every day. Obviously for the students in the classroom is important for them, but also for recruitment as well. So, and we try to connect it back to our mission that I started this presentation with. Is our mission is to meet the talent needs of our agricultural community, and which is obviously critical to our economy in this central Illinois. So obviously it's important for maintaining our program, but I think it's much more important to think about the impact that it can have, not only just on our program and number of students that we're seeing, but why it's important community-wide as well. So priority 2, we just want to continue to focus on developing those students' technical skills, academic skills, ensure their success in the ag career field, and retain them in the program and achieve program completion, and then also engage with our alumni and see what feedback they have after they've been in the workforce, but also engage with our agribusiness stakeholders just to maintain that connection and ensure that what we're providing to our students meets their needs, and they may have ways that they can help us as well. I'll give you just one example, since tomorrow my colleague Dave is going to pick it up. Was we kind of had on our list to buy a soil scan. We had a meeting with the company, and they have a few, and they're going to give us one. So instead of spending the money to do that, we're going to pick one up tomorrow. So just as an example of some of the value that continue to engage as you know, if you engage with those, there will be benefits you didn't anticipate to come through. So I appreciate the time, and hopefully I shared something that was of use, but if obviously recognize quite a few of the names in the chat, be glad to share more here today or via email or offline after this webinar as well. So I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, Jess. Really appreciate that robust explanation of all the great things that you all are doing at Richland. So now I want to take the time for us to just kind of reflect on some of the information that we just heard. And so I want to open up our chat for any questions and thoughts. So a couple of prompts that we have here on the screen, don't feel compelled to answer all of them, maybe pick one. If you could name something that is like still circling your mind, maybe a question that you have that you weren't able to answer, or maybe you just sparked a question. Maybe a thought or a concept that squares your thinking, that sits well with you, and 1 to 3 takeaways that you have about today's session. If you could just drop that in the chat, that'd be greatly appreciated. Again, we're still here. So if you have any lingering questions, we'll take this time to kind of address those as well. Again, any thoughts that are still circling your mind, lingering questions, concepts that sit well or square your thinking, or a few takeaways that you'd like to share with us and the group? Well, if anything comes to mind, feel free to email us, and then we'd love to definitely hear your thoughts and your feedback. And so here, if you have your phones, if you could take out your phone, take a screenshot. This is our survey. We want to know how we did, right? We want to make sure that we are giving you the information that you all need to be successful. So if you could take a screenshot and then submit that survey, that would be great. And so some of the survey questions are going to talk about the model programs of study. We're going to talk about like the advisory committee, the effectiveness of it, if you were a member or if you like to join that committee. And then we want to assess the overall webinar as a whole. So if you could take the time to just grab your phones quickly, screenshot, that would be great. If you don't have your phone near you in the moment, don't worry, because this will be emailed out, so you'll have another opportunity to go ahead and fill that survey out for us. And so a couple of things I want to highlight. I know Juan mentioned this earlier, but we have some upcoming webinars. So if you could keep this in the back of your mind, that will be great, or share this information on with your colleagues. We love to share the information and allow for them to understand and participate in great things that are happening. A couple of other things that I think is important to note is that we are going to add a few more model programs of study guides to our deck. And so we have one upcoming in hospitality or culinary hospitality, and also human and public services, non-education. We still have room for people who are interested in joining our human and public services advisory committee. So if that's something that you're interested in, please let us know, because we'd love to have you. And then next, I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Juan, to kind of dive into some information about IWIN.
Yes, so IWIN stands for the Illinois Work-Based Learning Innovation Network. And the intended audience of this, if the model programs of study guides are heavily focused on the course selection and kind of career technical competencies of kind of a model program of study of our pathway, IWIN is going to be primarily focused on the work-based learning components of a pathway implementation and things of that nature, right? So we have a kind of ongoing webinar series as well for kind of internship placements, career exploration, something called a team-based challenge, which is also a requirement for the creation of model programs of study at the community college level. So if you wanted examples of what is a team-based challenge, how do you implement it, how do you diversify your team-based challenges, we have a resource hub and a series of newsletters and kind of webinars with those topics. So we really encourage you all to kind of go to the slide deck that we've shared shared with you here, go to this slide, this page on the slide deck presentation and kind of open up a resource hub and kind of join our webinar series there. It's very helpful and it's led by some of our colleagues at EdSystems. Every webinar really kind of deep dives a certain industry sector and it shows examples of implementation of work-based learning in that industry sector. Obviously in the AFNR space, there's obviously going to be very robust examples also through kind of the state's FK network and kind of the FFA model here in the state for high school. But for the roles in community college and post-secondary institutions, we also recommend you check this out as well.
So that concludes our webinar for today. We thank you so much for joining us. Again, check your inboxes because you will be receiving this recording in your email to share with your colleagues along with the survey. So if you have any questions, please feel free to hang back because we'll be here for a moment.